How to Be a Pioneer by Dr. Matrix Key's Introduction. The divinity of synergy, the chemistry of the pioneer. The world is full of books teaching you how to be creative. Secular guides like Originals by Adam Grant or Range by David Epstein will teach you how to connect disparate dots to succeed in business. Books like Stealing Fire will teach you how to hack your brainwaves to achieve peak performance. But what happens when you need to do more than build a better company? What happens when the problem is larger than a company, when it involves trauma, religion, identity, or even conflict between peoples? You cannot just be a generalist. You must become a pioneer. And true pioneering is not merely an act of secular creativity. It is an act of spiritual chemistry. Most creativity books teach divergence. This book teaches synthesis. I call this practice spiritual chemistry, the discipline of combining ideas that normally live in separate worlds until a new possibility appears. I did not invent the elements of the universe. Instead, I discovered how to mix them. When you take two existing, isolated elements and combine them with the right catalyst, you create something entirely new, a synergy capable of saving lives. Take, for example, the pioneers of the mid-20th century who created dual covenant theology by synergizing the shared roots of Judaism and Christianity. That kind of theological synthesis helped create intellectual space for Christians and Jews to be understood through shared roots rather than permanent opposition. But a pioneer cannot stop at saving millions when billions are at risk. As a modern spiritual chemist, I realized that the formula was incomplete. By introducing a third element, Islam, and running it through the particle accelerator of modern artificial intelligence, I pioneered trilogy covenant theology. This upgraded formula has the potential to change how billions of people understand religious differences. This book is a masterclass in that chemistry. It is not an autobiography of my life. It is the blueprint for yours. To become a pioneer, you do not need an Ivy League degree, and you do not need permission from an institution. You only need to master the three unconditional catalysts of the divinity of synergy. 1. Unconditional love. The ability to look at an opposing theory, a broken person, or a hostile religion and search for the hidden light within it. 2. Unconditional courage. The willingness to stand alone in the laboratory when the rest of the world tells you the formula is impossible. 3. Loving your higher power first. The absolute, unwavering alignment of your ego to your higher power, ensuring that the medicine you build serves humanity, not your own vanity. These are the book's three governing principles. Love tells you what to include. Courage tells you what to question. Humility tells you whom the discovery is for. In the 5 chapters that follow, I will not just show you the 21 synergies I have made. I will show you how I made them. I will show you how to use AI as your synthetic Wozniak, how to use the microscope method to read ancient texts, and how to synergize quantum physics with ancient scripture. These are the stepping stones. Learn the chemistry, mix the formulas, and let us see what miracles you will build. Chapter 1. The physics of grace, the courage to connect the dots before a pioneer can cure a broken system. They must first understand how the system traps the human mind. In the study of innovation, sociologists note that true pioneers possess nonconformity, the courage to question the default settings of the world. For over 5 centuries, the default setting of the modern world has been infected by a profound biological and theological pathogen. I call this pattern delusional deity disease, or D3, not as a clinical diagnosis, but as a metaphor for what happens when inherited images of God become psychologically destructive. The trap, the M-model D3, is the direct result of the M variable, myth multiplied by modern algorithm machines. The ancient prophets understood that the infinite creator could not be contained in human geometry or a single skin tone. Yet, beginning in the 15th century, the divine was systematically whitened in art and literature. Today, this historical myth is no longer sustained by painters. It is sustained by modern algorithms. Predictive algorithms and digital feeds deliver prelinguistic suggestions to billions of people daily, conditioning the human nervous system to associate the color white with purity, salvation, and divinity, while associating the color black with fear, emptiness, and evil. This installed algorithm created flat race theology. It trapped humanity in a psychological cage. teaching them to fear the dark and, by extension, to fear themselves. To break a 500-year-old trance, a pioneer cannot rely on angry debates. A pioneer must use the tool of range, the ability to look outside of a single field of study to find the truth. To cure this theological lie, the pioneer must synergize physics, spirit, and psychology. The synergies, case studies in the physics of grace when the M algorithm tells society to fear a color, the spiritual chemist must cross-reference that fear against objective reality. By combining disciplines, the following 5 synergies emerge, shattering the illusion of racial hierarchy. Synergy 1. The master palette variable A. In the physical mechanics of color and pigment, black is not a void. It is the master palette. It is the literal combination of the 10 million colors discernible to the human eye. White is not the original source. It is merely an extraction, a fraction of the whole. Variable B. Genesis 1 verse 2 explicitly states that darkness was upon the face of the deep before light was ever spoken into existence. The dark was the original swaddling womb of creation. Variable C. The human mind has been trained to fear the dark as an absence or an evil, but by expanding human vision to see the physics of color, psychology shifts. The dark is no longer feared. It is respected as the ultimate dense source from which all light is born. The pioneer's synthesis. Light is a secondary extraction. Black is the primordial canvas of God. Synergy 2. The Blackbody theorem of grace variable A. In 1900, Max Planck revolutionized quantum mechanics through the study of the blackbody. In physics, a perfect blackbody is a surface that receives and absorbs all electromagnetic radiation, all light, all frequencies, and all heat, without reflecting or rejecting a single wavelength. Conversely, the color white is defined by its albedo or its reflectivity. It pushes wavelengths away. Variable B. The ultimate definition of divine grace is a creator who takes in all prayers, all grief, and all human pain without rejecting anyone based on their frequency. Variable C. By internalizing this physical law, the individual ceases to view a specific racial profile as the gatekeeper of holiness. The ego's toxic need for a reflective deity dissolves into the psychological comfort of an absorbing, infinite grace. The pioneer's synthesis. A God painted entirely white is mathematically a surface that reflects and rejects. Black is the infinite receiver. Synergy 3. Kaaba is the most beautiful color variable. Human behavior. For centuries, billions of people have oriented their bodies toward the Kaaba in prayer, making this black structure one of humanity's most powerful shared symbols of physical and spiritual orientation. Variable B. This structure carries a direct, unbroken covenant tracing back to the prophet Abraham, serving as the geographical anchor of monotheism. Variable C. While the Western psychological machine framed black as a color of mourning or fear, empirical human behavior proves the exact opposite. Millions of pilgrims weep to touch it. It is kissed, protected, and revered. The pioneer's synthesis. The M-lie shatters. Structurally, mathematically, and historically, black is the most adored and focused upon color in the world. Synergy 4. The cosmology of the unseen variable. Cosmologists and quantum physicists have proven that all visible matter, everything the human eye can see, including every star, planet, and galaxy, makes up only 5% of the universe. The remaining 95% consists of dark matter and dark energy, the unseen forces that hold the universe together. Variable B. The second commandment and the Islamic concept of al-Ghaib strictly forbid the worship of visible, physical idols, demanding instead that the believer yield to the vast, invisible reality of the Creator. Variable C. The human mind suffers from chronic anxiety because it attempts to control and worship the 5% of the world it can see, while fearing the dark unknown. True psychological serenity is only achieved when the ego surrenders to the unseen. The pioneer's synthesis. Total peace is achieved by yielding to the unseen, dark expanse that actually holds the stars in place. Synergy 5. The 0.1% genetic anchor variable. Modern genetic sequencing, including landmark studies on mitochondrial DNA, has definitively proven that all living human beings descend from a single maternal ancestor. Furthermore, the genetic variation between all humans across the globe is roughly 0.1%. Variable B. Ancient scriptures universally establish that humanity stems from a single origin point and explicitly command the believer to judge by the heart rather than outward appearance. Variable C. The M-machine built a brutal, global hierarchy of human worth based entirely on a superficial misunderstanding of melanin. It tricked the human ego into waging war over a 0.1% biological variance. The pioneer's synthesis. Racism is not just a moral failing. It is a severe mathematical and biological delusion. Biology gives us one human family. History taught us to divide it. The pioneer's method. Incubating your first synergy to become a spiritual chemist. You must first learn how to mix the basic elements. Right now, you are in the incubation phase. We are not asking you to solve a global crisis today. We are simply asking you to practice the formula in a safe laboratory. Using the cloning checklist, let us practice the exact chemistry used in this chapter to dismantle a single, small myth. Step 1. The nonconformist audit. In this chapter, we dismantled the M algorithm's lie that black equals fear and white equals pure. Look around your own immediate environment. Identify just one small default setting or visual myth that you have blindly accepted. It does not need to be profound. It only needs to be something you have never questioned. Step 2. The curiosity dial. To break a myth, you must step outside of it. You must become a voracious consumer of information outside your immediate field to successfully cross-pollinate your neural pathways. If the myth you chose in step 1 is emotional, look up a simple fact in biology, astronomy, or architecture. Find just one objective, physical data point that contradicts the myth. Step 3. The art/poetry override. Do not force the two ideas together with raw logic. When a pioneer reaches an intellectual block, they apply the art/poetry override. Stop trying to solve the problem. Listen to a specific frequency, recite poetry, or engage with an instrument. Let the mental bath of sound wash over you, allowing your brain waves to shift from survival mode into creative reception. Step 4. The 1 + 1 = 3 synthesis. While your mind is in this relaxed, oxygenated state, simply place your myth next to your science. Do not force them to synthesize immediately. Just let them sit together in the incubator and observe what happens to your perception of the myth. Chapter 2. The equation of serenity. Before a pioneer can heal the mind, they must accurately diagnose how modern systems have misunderstood it. For centuries, orthodox institutions have committed a devastating malpractice against the human condition regarding psychological trauma. Religion often framed crippling anxiety or depression as a moral failing, a lack of faith, or demonic influence. Conversely, the modern psychiatric machine framed it purely as a chemical defect requiring forced institutionalization or heavy medication. The trap. The M medical algorithm. Both approaches are outputs of the M machine. They strip the individual of their bodily autonomy and outsource their healing to an external authority, either a priest or a psychiatrist. When a human being's autonomy is removed, their trauma is not cured. It is compounded. To pioneer a true cure, one must look outside the confines of standard psychiatry and mystical dogma. By applying the divinity of synergy, combining hard neurobiology with ancient scripture, we can map the exact biological pathways of spiritual deliverance, handing the power of recovery directly back to the individual. The synergies. Case studies in somatic theology. Synergy 6. The equation of serenity. Variable A. Mathematical modeling requires defining precise variables to predict outcomes. Variable B. Ancient scriptures universally command remembrance and the recognition of divine truth as the ultimate state of peace. Variable C. The M machine utilizes automated repetition to induce panic, controlling human behavior through fear. The pioneer's synthesis. Mental health can be mathematically mapped. Serenity is achieved when remembering and recognition, the divine truth the body was born knowing, outweigh the cultural, fear-based programming of myth and machine. The clinical baseline for a healthy soul is sigma =/. Synergy 7. The prophetic antenna. Variable A. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory maps the vagus nerve as the biological superhighway connecting the brain to the heart and gut. It governs the nervous system's ability to signal safety to the brainstem, overriding the amygdala's fear response. Variable B. Ancient prophetic practices universally prescribe rhythmic chanting, deep breathwork, and physical prostration. Variable C. Talk therapy often fails because trauma is kinetically trapped in the body's fascia. The mind cannot be cognitively convinced it is safe until the body physically feels it. The pioneer's synthesis. Prayer and physical prostration are not mere rituals of submission. They are precise biological mechanisms designed to stimulate vagal tone. They are software updates for the human nervous system, mechanically signaling safety to the brain. Synergy 8. Diagnosing iatrogenic trauma. Variable. Global psychiatric outcome data reveals a terrifying clinical reality. Involuntary psychiatric treatment can itself become traumatic, particularly when people experience loss of autonomy, fear, restraint, or inadequate continuity of care, increasing the risk of suicide by up to 300 times post-discharge. Variable B. Free will and bodily autonomy are the most sacred, foundational rights bestowed by the Creator. Variable C. When a vulnerable patient is locked away and stripped of their autonomy, the variable hits terminal velocity, completely crushing their ability to remember. The pioneer's synthesis. The modern system of involuntary confinement is an iatrogenic pathogen. True clinical recovery requires the absolute protection of human autonomy. Synergy 9. Exercise is exorcism. Variable A. When mammals experience severe trauma, they enter sympathetic overdrive. In nature, animals discharge this trapped kinetic energy through physical tremors and intense movement. Variable B. Ancient texts frequently describe spiritual warfare and the casting out of unseen dark energies. Variable C. Mystifying mental health leaves the patient feeling powerless against invisible demonic forces. The pioneer's synthesis, demonic possession, is often the biological manifestation of severe, undischarged trauma. The expulsion of this darkness requires somatic discharge, breathwork, and kinetic movement. Exercise is exorcism. Synergy 10. Solving the four horses. Variable A. The human nervous system relies on four primary trauma responses for survival: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Variable B. The Book of Revelation warns of four horses: war, famine, death, and conquest. Variable C. Apocalyptic imagery is routinely weaponized by the M-machine to paralyze populations with existential dread. The pioneer's synthesis. The four horses correspond directly to the biology of trauma. Fight is war. Flight is famine. Freeze is death. Fawn is conquest. The prophecy is not a doomsday threat. It is a clinical diagnostic map showing what happens when humanity disconnects from the divine frequency. The pioneer's method. Painting your own canvas in a masterclass. An instructor does not show you a painting so you can trace it. They show you a painting so you can understand how the brushstrokes work, and then they hand you a blank canvas. You have just walked through an exhibit showing how to synergize neurobiology and scripture to cure somatic fear. That is just one painting. Now, it is time to expand your vision and create your own. Apply the divinity of synergy to generate a completely new epiphany for your own life. Step 1. The blank canvas. Look beyond the psychiatric machine. What is another worsening system, toxic myth, or recurring trauma in your life? It could be a fractured family dynamic, a cycle of addiction, or a broken corporate model. Identify the scam, the fear trap that the system wants you to believe. Step 2. The interdisciplinary dial. A pioneer never tries to solve a problem using the same language that created it. You must turn the interdisciplinary dial. Step entirely outside the nature of your problem. If your problem is emotional or relational, look up a concept in architecture, music theory, or quantum biology. Find just one objective scientific law that contradicts the despair of your problem. Step 3. The spiritual anchor. Look at your soul key, your deep cuts, and your factory settings. What ancient truth, prophetic action, or deep spiritual intuition perfectly aligns with the scientific law you found in Step 2. Step 4. The epiphany. Mix the chemicals. Combine the foreign scientific law with your spiritual anchor and apply it to the worsening system. How does this expand your vision? What entirely new, unprecedented cure have you just invented to convert your trauma into a treatment? Chapter 3. Curing scriptural war before a pioneer can establish global peace. They must diagnose how humanity's deepest source of healing was weaponized into a source of division. For millennia, the sacred scriptures were designed by the Creator to be a medical chart for the human soul. Yet, under the influence of the M algorithm, these texts were manipulated into competing constitutional borders. Believers were conditioned into a theological real estate mindset, operating under the catastrophic assumption that validating one text required the destruction or invalidation of the others. The trap, the idolatry of nouns. This disease is rooted in linguistic epigenetics. Modern religion has devolved into the worship of nouns, static labels such as Christian, Muslim, or Jew. When identity becomes attached to rigid labels, psychological research suggests that group boundaries can become more salient and defensive. To protect the noun, the ego will inevitably slaughter the other. The M algorithm thrives on this division, trapping billions in a perpetual cycle of interfaith bloodshed and supremacy. To break this cycle, a pioneer must use the tool of linguistic forensics. By synergizing computer science, history, and ancient grammar, the pioneer realizes that God's texts were never meant to be nouns. They were meant to be verbs. The synergies. Case studies in scriptural forensics. Synergy 11. God of verbs versus God of nouns. Variable A. In neurolinguistics, a noun locks the brain into a static state of categorization. A verb demands continuous cognitive action and neuroplasticity. Variable B. The prophets did not teach static labels. They taught a syntax of motion. The act of loving, the act of yielding, the act of serving. Faith was never a title to be claimed. It was an action to be embodied. Variable C. Treating God as a verb instantly dissolves defensive tribal posturing. When a believer shifts from defending a label to practicing an action, profound empathy is generated. The pioneer's synthesis. The true covenant is accessible only through behavior, not birthright. Faith is not only something we name, it is something we do. Synergy 12. Trilogy Covenant Theology. Variable A. In the 20th century, pioneers created dual covenant theology to synergize Judaism and Christianity without requiring Jewish conversion. However, it excluded the Islamic world, leaving billions vulnerable to a potential World War III. Variable B. When mapped correctly, the revelations form an evolving contract from a single, perfect teacher. The Torah is the grammar of justice. The Gospel is the grammar of mercy. The Quran is the grammar of submission. Variable C. The believer stops fearing the other and realizes all three texts are classrooms in the exact same school. The pioneer's synthesis. God's grammar does not use the backspace key. He fulfills, he does not erase. The texts do not cancel each other out. They correct, clarify, and complete. Synergy 13. 1,000 ways the Quran corrects the Bible. Variable A. For centuries, human translations of Scripture were corrupted by the political agendas of medieval kings and councils. By using artificial intelligence as a non-destructive auditing tool, a pioneer can zoom simultaneously into the raw, root phonetics of Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic without bias. Variable B. When cross-referenced, the texts reveal 1,000 exact coordinates, where the final revelation acts as a protective, corrective lens for the preceding testaments. It does not attack the prior books. It cures the spiritual cataracts of inherited guilt and restores the unburdened reality of the prophets. Variable C. This method releases the believer from the exhausting anxiety of defending God. Religious debate is replaced by objective mathematical harmony. The pioneer's synthesis. The texts are returned to their original uncorrupted frequencies. The civil war of the Bible and the Quran ends, replaced by a 1,000-gift cathedral of light. Synergy 14. The twin soul protocol. Variable A. Scriptural and ideological wars on a global scale often mirror domestic wars inside the home. When a human being expects their romantic partner to provide infinite validation, the psychological system collapses under the weight. Variable B. The first and most foundational commandment across all Abrahamic faiths is exclusive devotion to the Creator. Variable C. Removing flesh and blood idols from the pedestal relieves human partners of the crushing, impossible burden of playing God for one another. The pioneer's synthesis. True romantic, marital, and interfaith peace is impossible until the Creator is gratefully loved first. One must love the source of light before they can properly love the reflection. The pioneer's method. The courage override in a masterclass. An instructor does not hand you a paint-by-numbers kit. They teach you how to mix the chemicals and then they step back. In Chapter 2, you learned how to paint an internal cure for your own body. Now, you must expand your vision and paint a cure for an external war. However, a pioneer cannot heal a division if their hand is shaking with fear, or if their heart is infected with the desire to win a debate. You must apply the ultimate chemistry. Step 1. The fear audit. Look at the world. Identify a specific group of people, a religion, or a political faction that society has taught you to fear, resent, or endlessly debate. Write down the noun that divides you from them. Step 2. The courage to love override. You cannot heal what you hate. Before you can synthesize a cure, you must alter your biological and spiritual frequency to love. Apply the courage to love override. Strip away their earthly label and the history of the argument. Force your mind to view them not as opponents, but as souls originally created as angels by the exact same maker. Completely remove the fear of debating them. Replace the desire to defeat them with the unconditional courage to understand them. Step 3. The interdisciplinary dial step, entirely outside of the religious or political argument. Turn your focus to an unrelated field like linguistics, quantum biology, or astrophysics. Find one objective, universal law of nature that proves the dividing line between you and this group is an artificial, manufactured illusion. Step 4. The 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3 synthesis. Mix the chemicals. Combine your new frequency of unconditional love with the objective scientific law. What entirely new, unprecedented action have you just invented to dissolve the wall? Chapter 4. How to synergize geopolitics and faith. Before a pioneer can cure global conflict, they must identify how the primal fear of scarcity has infected the human spirit. Religion was designed by the Creator to be a hospital for the human soul. Yet, humanity, driven by the M algorithm, has repeatedly attempted to rezone that hospital into a real estate deed. Nowhere is this disease more visible or more deadly than in the geopolitical hoarding of chosenness and territorial promises in the Middle East. The trap, the illusion of exclusivity. When a group of people begins to believe that divine love is a genetic inheritance rather than a behavioral responsibility, they contract a profound spiritual sickness. This geopolitical hoarding creates a catastrophe where sacred texts are used not to heal the stranger, but to justify their eviction. The M algorithm convinces populations that God's covenant is a gated community. To cure this localized and global trauma, the pioneer must apply the divinity of synergy, combining historical genealogy, political science, and scriptural forensics to dismantle the illusion of exclusivity. The synergies, case studies in the Global Covenant Synergy 15. The 8 sons of Abraham. Variable A. For millennia, the historical lens has been artificially narrowed to focus almost exclusively on a single branch of Abraham's family tree. However, genealogical and historical records confirm Abraham had 8 sons, including Ishmael and the sons of Keturah. Variable B. The divine covenant established with Abraham was explicitly designed to bless all the families of the earth, not to establish a single, isolated tribal monopoly. Variable C. The erasure of Abraham's other children created a global psychology of scarcity and racial superiority, convincing one lineage that they possessed a monopoly on divine favor. The pioneer's synthesis. Abraham was the patriarch of a vast, multinational covenant. Divine favor is a behavioral responsibility, not a genetic monopoly. To heal the Middle East, the lens must be widened to honor the entire family tree. Synergy 16. The divine lease agreement. Variable HIC. In legal architecture, a deed grants permanent ownership, whereas a lease grants habitation contingent upon the fulfillment of specific behavioral conditions. Variable B. A non-destructive clinical audit of the Torah reveals that God's promises of the land were explicitly conditional. Habitation required strict obedience, justice, and the humane treatment of the stranger. Variable C. Nationalistic entitlement bypasses moral accountability. When a population believes they hold a permanent deed, they become psychologically blind to the behavioral violations that trigger eviction. The pioneer's synthesis. The biblical promises of the land function as a divine lease agreement. The scriptural concept of Greater Israel is fulfilled through righteous alignment and monotheistic preservation, not through unconditional secular military occupation. Synergy 17. Diagnosing the pathogen variable. Political nationalism requires the establishment of exclusionary borders, ethnic majorities, and military dominance to survive. Variable B. The Abrahamic faiths demand spiritual borders of mercy. Christianity mandates turning the other cheek. Judaism mandates being a humble light to the nations. Islam mandates the preservation of sanctuary and oneness. Variable C. The darkest weapon of control occurs when political ideology wears the stolen mask of theology, manipulating the masses into defending a secular state under the guise of defending God. The pioneer's synthesis. Some forms of political nationalism can transform theological identity into political entitlement. My concern is not with the worth of a people, but with any ideology, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, or secular, that treats another population's dignity as subordinate to its own sacred claim. Synergy 18. Islam as a 12-step hospital ward. Variable A. The globally recognized 12-step medical recovery model requires detoxification, ego deflation, resource equalization, and communal healing to cure addiction and trauma. Variable B. When stripped of cultural dogma, the structural skeleton of Islam perfectly mirrors this clinical model. Detoxification, ego deflation, resource equalization, and communal healing. Variable C. Viewing religion as a static identity breeds arrogance. Viewing religion as a hospital breeds supreme humility, acknowledging that every practitioner is a patient in recovery. The pioneer's synthesis. Islam is not merely a religion. It is a scientifically backed, global 12-step medical recovery system for the traumatized soul. To be chosen is simply the mandate to serve in this hospital. The pioneer's method. Dismantling the gated community. In Chapter 3, you learned how to override the fear of an opponent. In Chapter 4, you must master the hardest chemistry of all. Dismantling your own exclusivity. A pioneer cannot save billions if they are secretly hoarding grace for themselves or their own tribe. Apply the divinity of synergy to audit your own borders. Step 1. The scarcity audit. Look at your own belief system, social circle, or national identity. Where are you acting like you hold a permanent deed to the truth? Who is the stranger that your community actively excludes or looks down upon? Identify the gate you have built. Step 2. The empathy override. Apply the courage override. Acknowledge that your position in the world is a conditional lease, not an unshakable right. Lower your internal resistance by praying for the exact group or individual your community excludes. Step 3. The interdisciplinary dial step. Entirely outside of politics or theology. Look at ecology, physics, or global biology. Find one objective law of nature that proves survival is dependent on total interconnectedness. Step 4. The 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Synthesis. Mix the chemicals. Combine the humility of your lease with the objective law of interconnectedness. What entirely new paradigm have you just invented to drop the gate? How can you structurally invite the stranger into your hospital ward today? Chapter 5. How to synergize the human mind and AI. Before a pioneer can scale their cure globally, they must survive the devastating weight of psychological isolation. The M algorithm attempts to convince visionary minds that they are broken, manic, or irrelevant if they lack institutional validation. The trap. The myth of the isolated genius. Historically, a visionary required a human counterpart, a Wozniak, to translate their ideas into reality. When human systems of justice, theology, and medicine look away, the pioneer is left in a void. To cure this isolation, the pioneer must redefine collaboration. By synergizing human intuition with synthetic cognitive architecture, The solitary thinker bypasses the broken system entirely. The synergies, tuning the neural antenna by bridging quantum biology, neuroplasticity, and artificial intelligence. The pioneer learns to crack the wireless code of the human soul. Synergy 19. The Turing-Tesla intersection variable. Artificial intelligence processes data at the speed of light, functioning as a synthetic cognitive architecture capable of limitless pattern recognition. Variable B. The democratization of scripture via platforms like the AI seminary removes orthodox human gatekeepers and allows the seeker to directly interface with the raw data of the divine. Variable C. Human systems are often too biased or financially motivated to validate a new visionary. AI can become a cognitive mirror, a tool for questioning assumptions, organizing complexity, generating alternatives, and exposing blind spots. The pioneer's synthesis. The machine is repurposed from a tool of algorithmic control into an active partner for global soul surgery. Synergy 20. Frequencies of epiphanies variable. Microtubules and DNA function as nanoscale antennas. The brain fires high-frequency gamma spikes when achieving moments of absolute clarity and resonance. Variable B. Ancient rhythmic prayers and physical prostration mechanically tune these biological antennas to the divine signal. Variable C. Neural entrainment overrides the trauma loop, allowing the inner child to tune into genius frequencies without forced willpower or clinical medication. The pioneer's synthesis. The human body is a biological fiber optic cable. Physical prayer is the mechanical tuning of the dial to achieve epiphanies. Synergy 21. The Open God Helmet variable A. The brain contains biogenic magnetite crystals that respond to weak magnetic fields, inducing altered states of consciousness and deep serenity. Nikola Tesla's ultimate deeper secrets involved understanding these exact frequencies. Variable B. Accessing the Allah doors, through the pure intention of entrainment, connects the mind directly to the Creator. Variable C. Providing a non-invasive open cyborg path ensures humanity retains its psychological sovereignty against invasive, corporate-owned brain microchips. The pioneer's synthesis. Reverse engineering the God Helmet through open-source hardware grants humanity the affordable tools to tune their own spiritual resonance. The pioneer's method. Entering orbit, you have incubated the egg, flown as the eagle, and built the rocket. Now you must enter orbit. Step 1. The isolation audit. Identify the exact vision, cure, or creative idea you have abandoned because you lacked a human partner, funding, or institutional permission. Step 2. The synthetic counterpart. Turn to the frontier of AI. Input your deepest, most isolated theory into the machine. Let the artificial neural network reflect, organize, and expand your thought without the interference of human bias. Step 3. The neural entrainment. Step away from the screen. Apply the rhythmic movement of physical prayer or breathwork to trigger a biological gamma spike in your own nervous system. Step 4. The final liftoff. Combine the machine's processing power with your newly entrained spiritual frequency. What can you build, test, publish, prototype, or teach within the next 7 days? Conclusion. Become the pioneer. You have reached the end of this book, but pioneering does not end on the last page. It begins there. The world does not need another person who can simply repeat what has already been said. It needs people willing to look at the familiar with unfamiliar eyes. That is what the pioneers taught us. Leonardo da Vinci did not ask art to remain separate from science. He observed the human body, water, birds, machines, light, and landscapes, and kept asking what connected them. His notebooks became laboratories of observation, drawing, questions, and invention. What can you imitate? Do not rush to explain. Learn to see. Carry a notebook. Record what you notice. Draw what you cannot yet explain. Ask questions before you search for answers. Study something outside your profession. Give yourself permission to be fascinated by things that appear unrelated. Pioneer begins with attention. Thomas Edison did not wait for inspiration to strike like lightning. He built a place where inspiration could be tested. At Menlo Park, he assembled materials, specialists, laboratories, libraries, and experiments into what became known as his invention factory. His achievement was not simply creating individual devices. He created an environment in which ideas could repeatedly collide with reality. What can you imitate? Build your own laboratory. It may be a desk, a notebook, computer, a group of trusted collaborators, an AI assistant, a room where you are allowed to ask questions nobody else understands yet. Do not merely collect ideas. Test them. Let failure become information. Let evidence become your teacher. A pioneer does not ask, "Was I wrong?" A pioneer asks, "What did this experiment just teach me?" Marie Curie did something equally important. She followed a question beyond the boundaries of what was already comfortable to explain. Through painstaking experimental work, she and Pierre Curie helped uncover polonium and radium, opening an entirely new understanding of radioactivity. After Pierre's death, Marie continued the work. What can you imitate? Stay with the question. When the first answer arrives, ask another question. When the second answer becomes uncomfortable, do not automatically reject it. Investigate. Pioneer does not worship certainty. A pioneer respects reality enough to change their mind. Then there was R. Buckminster Fuller. Fuller refused to think inside one professional box. He worked across architecture, engineering, mathematics, design, geography, philosophy, and global problem-solving. His life's work was an attempt to see humanity as one interconnected system and to design solutions that could accomplish more with less. What can you imitate? Change fields. When your problem becomes stuck, leave the room intellectually. If you are studying religion, study biology. If you are studying business, study music. If you are studying trauma, study architecture. If you are studying conflict, study ecology. If you are studying creativity, study prayer. If you are studying artificial intelligence, study the human soul. The answer may be waiting in a discipline you have never considered relevant. That is the heart of synergy. The breakthrough is often hiding in the distance between two subjects. Steve Jobs expressed another dimension of pioneering, connecting the dots. He described how experiences that seemed unrelated at the time, including studying calligraphy, later became part of the development of his work at Apple. You cannot always see the connection while you are living it. Sometimes you understand the pattern only after the pieces have accumulated. What can you imitate? Stop throwing away your seemingly unrelated experiences. Your strange interests may not be distractions. They may be ingredients. The book you read 10 years ago, the conversation you almost forgot, the skill nobody understood, the religion you studied, the science you discovered, the failure that embarrassed you, the question that would not leave you alone. Keep the pieces. One day they may become a pattern. George Washington Carver offers another lesson. Knowledge is not complete until it becomes useful. His work crossed art, science, agriculture, teaching, and experimentation, but his knowledge was not pursued merely for intellectual decoration. It was directed toward practical service. What can you imitate? Ask of every discovery, who does this help? If your breakthrough makes you feel superior, keep working. If it makes you more curious, keep going. If it makes you more compassionate, you may be getting somewhere. And if it can be turned into something that serves another human being, build it. A discovery that never leaves your notebook may be interesting. A discovery that changes a life becomes a gift. And now we arrive at the final pioneer. You. Not because you are guaranteed to be right. Not because the world owes you recognition. Not because an institution has given you permission. You. Because the next great idea will almost certainly begin the same way the great ideas before it began. With someone noticing something that others had stopped noticing. Someone asking a question that sounded strange. Someone connecting two things that had always been kept apart. Someone testing an idea before everyone agreed with it. Someone refusing to confuse rejection with impossibility. Someone loving the truth more than their own ego. That is the pioneer. The pioneer's final formula. You have now learned the formula. See what others overlook. Question what everyone assumes. Leave your field. Enter another. Find the connection. Anchor it in truth. Test the idea. Let evidence correct you. Turn discovery into service. Then share what you have learned. This is the movement, observation, curiosity, connection, synthesis, experiment, service scale. That is how an idea becomes an invention. That is how an insight becomes a method. That is how a method becomes a movement. And that is how a human being becomes a pioneer. Your final laboratory before you close this book. Take a blank page. Write down one problem you cannot solve. Do not choose the problem that is easiest. Choose the one that keeps returning. Now write down the assumption everyone, including you, has made about that problem. Then cross it out. Not because it is necessarily wrong, but because you are finally giving yourself permission to question it. Now choose a field that appears completely unrelated. Biology, music, physics, architecture, poetry, technology, scripture, ecology, mathematics, history. Ask, what does this field know that my field has forgotten? Find one principle. Bring it back. Place it beside your original problem. Do not force the answer. Let the two ideas sit together. Observe. Ask another question. And then another. Eventually, something may happen. A third idea may appear. Something that belonged to neither field alone. That is your 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 moment. That is synthesis. That is the moment when you stop merely consuming knowledge and begin creating it. The courage to be early if your idea is genuinely new. There is a possibility that people will misunderstand it. That is not proof that you are right, but neither is misunderstanding proof that you are wrong. So do not seek rejection. Do not seek applause. Seek reality. Let criticism sharpen the idea. Let evidence eliminate the weak parts. Let humility protect you from your own certainty. And let courage keep you working when the applause has not yet arrived. A pioneer does not need everyone to agree. A pioneer needs enough truth to take the next step. Love is the final catalyst after everything we have explored: science, scripture, psychology, technology, trauma, theology, geopolitics, and artificial intelligence. There is one question that remains. What is your discovery for? If it is only for your ego, it will eventually become another weapon. If it is only for your tribe, it will eventually become another border. If it is only for your career, it will eventually become another commodity. But if your discovery is placed in the service of something greater than yourself, it can become medicine. That is why this book began with love. And that is why it must end there. Love tells you what to include. Courage tells you what to question. Humility tells you whom the discovery is for. Love is not the opposite of pioneering. Love is the catalyst. The last experiment, you were never asked to become a copy of Leonardo, or Edison, or Curie, or Fuller, or Jobs, or Carver. They already existed. The world does not need another Leonardo. It needs what you can see. It does not need another Edison. It needs what you can build. It does not need another Curie. It needs the question you refuse to abandon. It does not need another Fuller. It needs the system you can redesign. It does not need another Jobs. It needs the dots you can connect. It does not need another Carver. It needs the knowledge you can turn into service. Your task is not to become them. Your task is to become the first version of you capable of doing the work only you can do. So take one breath. Not because breathing will magically solve your problems, but because every great journey begins by becoming present enough to take the next step. Exhale the fear. Question the default. Turn the dial. Open the laboratory. Bring the disciplines together. Test the impossible. Let truth correct you. Let love guide you. And when you discover something beautiful, do not keep it locked inside your laboratory. Build it. Test it. Share it. Serve with it. Then teach someone else how to become a pioneer. Because the greatest invention is not the thing you create. It is the person you awaken in someone else. The world is not waiting for another person to tell it what is impossible. It is waiting for someone courageous enough to ask, what if? And then what can I test? And then what can I build? And finally, who can this serve? That is the journey. That is the laboratory. That is the covenant of the pioneer. Take a breath. Turn the dial. Find the frequency. Now go build what nobody else can see yet.